Just when you think you've seen and heard it all, stories like this remind you of the unimaginable horrors unfolding in some corners of the world. This particular incident, when I stumbled upon it, left me reflecting on the depths of human desperation and the lengths some people will go to achieve their desires, even if it means betraying their own flesh and blood. Up until this moment, many still wonder what could have made a sister betray her own blood on the most sacred day of their life. This mind-disturbing question still lingers in the minds of those who followed this shocking case. A day when a joyous wedding celebration turned into a blood-soaked nightmare. On the day of the crime, a bride-to-be stood in front of her childhood bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting her wedding veil, unaware that her younger sister was about to destroy everything, in ways no one could have imagined. The desperate screams that echoed through the halls of the hotel that day didn't belong in the setting of a wedding. But then again, this was no ordinary wedding day. What began as a celebration of love would end in shocking violence, forever changing the lives of everyone involved. This is the story of how one sister's obsession led to a tragedy that nobody saw coming. Or maybe they just didn't want to see it. Before we go further into today's devastating story of sisterly betrayal and its fatal consequences, I'm Davis, and you're watching Crime Realities. If you're new here, take a moment to subscribe to True Crime Stories 24/7. On this channel, we share these stories not just to inform, but to help protect you and your loved ones from similar tragedies. Your subscription helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. So, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification, and give this video a thumbs up. With that done, let's continue. Annette had always been the responsible one. At 29, she had built exactly the life she'd dreamed of. A fulfilling career as a second-grade teacher at a prestigious school in Boston, a charming colonial house in the suburbs she'd bought with her savings, and most importantly, a loving relationship with Gibson, the man she was finally about to marry. This guy wasn't just successful, he was the kind of person who lit up every room he entered. As one of Boston's top management consultants, he had a natural charm that served him well in business and life. But with Annette, friends said, you saw a different side of him, softer, more genuine. They seemed perfect together, the kind of couple other people looked at and thought, that's what I want. And then there was Sabrina, Annette's younger sister by 2 years. Sabrina had always lived in the shadow of her older sister's achievements, though her sister never saw it that way. While Annette took the safe route, college, career, savings account, Sabrina chased excitement. She jumped from job to job in marketing, each position more prestigious than the last, but nothing ever seemed to satisfy her. The same went for her relationships, a string of successful men, none lasting more than a few months. But despite their differences, the Elliott sisters had always been close. Growing up, they shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. Their mother Susan would later tell investigators, tears streaming down her face, they were inseparable. Sabrina was Annette's maid of honor at the wedding. How could we have known? The warning signs were there, though subtle at first. When Annette and Gibson announced their engagement after 3 years of dating, Sabrina's congratulatory hug lasted a bit too long. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. But families are complicated, people said. Of course, there might be a little jealousy. That's normal, isn't it? Sabrina threw herself into the wedding planning with an enthusiasm that, in hindsight, should have raised eyebrows. She insisted on accompanying Annette to every appointment: dress fittings, cake tastings, venue visits. She's just being supportive, Annette told her concerned mother. She's always wanted to be a wedding planner, you remember? But unknown to them all, Sabrina's eyes followed Gibson, her sister's husband-to-be, more than the wedding details. According to reports and findings, the first real red flag came 6 months before the wedding. Annette's best friend Leora noticed Sabrina and Gibson in deep conversation at a family dinner, heads bent close together, speaking in whispers. When Annette approached, they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Gibson laughed it off. "We were discussing your bridal shower surprises," he said. Sabrina nodded too quickly, her face flushed. Annette wanted to believe them. After all, this was her sister, her best friend since childhood. And Gibson. He was her rock, her safe harbor. The thought that something might be happening between them was too painful to consider. So she pushed her doubts aside and focused on the wedding plans. on her future. Day by day, their suspicious behavior intensified. The late-night texts that Gibson would quickly delete. The way Sabrina always seemed to know Gibson's schedule better than her sister did. The lingering touches that lasted a moment too long. Looking back, the signs formed a clear pattern. But love and trust can blind us to even the most obvious betrayals. Do you think Annette should have confronted her sister or Gibson at this point? Personally, if I were in her shoes, I would have acted the same way she did. But perhaps you've had a similar experience. Let's hear from you. Kindly share your thoughts in the comment section below. 3 weeks before the wedding, Leora, the friend to Annette, found something that could no longer be ignored. While helping Sabrina with bridal shower decorations, she accidentally knocked over Sabrina's purse. Among the scattered contents was a hotel keycard and a receipt from a hotel in Boston, dated the previous week, when Gibson was supposedly on a business trip to New York. Leora agonized over whether to tell Annette. Wouldn't ignorance be kinder? But true friends tell hard truths, even when it hurts. So, on a rainy Tuesday evening, Leora sat Annette down and shared her discovery, speaking out of her own sincere heart and concern for a friend. Annette listened in silence, her face growing paler with each word. When Leora finished, Annette simply stood up, walked to her bathroom, and vomited. According to reports, she sighed and closed the discussion without saying a word. Perhaps what she'd just heard had confirmed her worst suspicions. But Annette didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, she took a step that would later prove fateful. She began gathering evidence. She didn't want to act on suspicion and rumors alone. She needed concrete proof. She wanted to catch them red-handed. As part of her plan, Annette secretly reviewed Gibson's phone records, installed security cameras in their home, and, as the mastermind of her scheme, even hired a private investigator. The plan unfolded quietly in the background as everyone went about their daily lives. But eventually, what Annette discovered turned her stomach and set the stage for the bloodshed no one could have foreseen. Now, this is getting interesting and at the same time scary. But I want to ask you as my listener, at this point, what do you see coming? Perhaps you're feeling just as confused as I was when I first learned about this case. Stay with me till the end if you want to know how this modern-day Cain and Abel story ends. However, I'm still very much interested in your guesses. Leave a comment with your theories about what you think will happen next. Trust me, the truth is more shocking than you might think. The next few weeks passed in a blur of wedding preparations and secret surveillance. Annette maintained a perfect facade, the excited bride, the loving sister, the trusting fiancé. Inside, she was dying, but don't forget, she had a plan that would culminate on her wedding day in a way that would make headlines across the country. The morning of May 15th dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a wedding. The Grand Hotel buzzed with activity as vendors set up flowers, caterers prepared food, and guests began to arrive. Annette arrived early, sequestering herself in the bridal suite with her closest friends. Sabrina arrived shortly after, carrying a garment bag that she claimed contained her bridesmaid's dress. No one thought to question why Sabrina's bag seemed unusually large. No one noticed her slip away while Annette was having her makeup done. No one suspected that in her own hotel room, Sabrina was putting on a white dress. Not just any white dress, but an exact replica of Annette's wedding gown. The horror of what happened next would haunt everyone present for years to come. It was Annette's mother who discovered the first body. Walking past Sabrina's hotel room on her way to check on the flower arrangements, she heard what sounded like muffled sobs. She knocked, but there was no answer. Using her spare key card, she'd insisted on having one for both of her daughter's rooms. Why she had those keys, no one knows. As she opened the door, the sight that greeted her would haunt her nightmares for years to come. Leora, Annette's best friend and voice of warning, lay unconscious on the floor, a thin line of blood trickling from her temple. But it was the writing on a piece of paper beside her that made Susan Elliott's blood run cold. She never deserved him. Before she could scream for help, Susan heard a commotion from the bridal suite down the hall. The sound of shattering glass, followed by screams that would later be described by witnesses as absolutely guttural. When police later pieced together the timeline, they realized that in those crucial moments, three separate acts of violence were unfolding simultaneously across different parts of the hotel. In the bridal suite, Annette had just finished her makeup when her sister walked in. At first, in the confusion of the moment, no one realized what they were seeing. Sabrina stood in the doorway, a vision in white, wearing an exact replica of Annette's wedding dress. But it was her eyes that everyone would later remember. They weren't human, one bridesmaid later testified. They were scary and empty, like looking into a void. "Do you like it?" Sabrina asked, twirling in the dress. "I had it made specially. Gibson helped me pick out the fabric." Her voice was eerily calm, almost childlike. "He says I wear it better than you ever could." Annette, still seated at the vanity, didn't turn around. Instead, she reached into her makeup bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "You mean like you wore it better at the Harbor Hotel 3 weeks ago?" Her voice was steady and controlled. "Or at the Cape last month?" She began laying out photographs on the vanity. Surveillance photos showing Sabrina and Gibson together, entering hotels, sharing intimate moments they thought were secret. Sabrina's face contorted. "You had us followed? You little—" But Annette wasn't finished. She stood up, still in her silk robe, and faced her sister. "I've known everything, Sabrina. Every meeting, every text, every lie. And so has Gibson's wife in California." The revelation hit Sabrina like a physical blow. "What? What wife?" The color drained from her face as Annette continued. "The one he never divorced. The one he's still living with when he's on those business trips to LA. We're not the only ones he's been lying to, my dear." Meanwhile, in the groom's suite, Gibson was dealing with his own crisis. His phone had just lit up with simultaneous messages from both Elliott sisters, along with several screenshots from his actual wife in California. As he desperately tried to figure out his next move, he didn't hear the door open behind him. Back in the bridal suite, years of sibling rivalry and months of betrayal erupted into violence. Sabrina lunged at Annette, the pristine white dress now stained with spilled makeup and blood from her cut hands. She had smashed the vanity mirror with her bare fists. But Annette was ready. According to some of her background reports, years of self-defense classes, taken after a close call in college, had prepared her for this moment. What happened next would later be described by witnesses as a scene from a nightmare. The pristine bridal suite transformed into a battlefield of shattered dreams and broken trust. The whole of the hotel turned upside down. Expensive champagne bottles became weapons, diamond jewelry turned into brass knuckles, and a pair of scissors meant for last-minute dress alterations would ultimately deliver the most devastating blow. The hotel security cameras captured what happened next. Sabrina, still wearing the stolen wedding dress, now stained with both blood and tears, staggered down the hallway toward the groom's suite. She was clutching something in her hand, the scissors from the bridal suite, their blades gleaming under the hotel's chandeliers. But what she found when she burst through Gibson's door would change everything. Gibson, the man who orchestrated this entire tragedy, was already dead. Not from violence, but from what the coroner later confirmed as a massive heart attack, triggered by extreme stress and his asthmatic condition. Tragically, he had been unable to reach his inhaler during the attack, and with no one around to help, he succumbed. When he was found, his phone was still in his hand, open to a group chat where both Elliott sisters had simultaneously exposed his intricate web of lies. On his laptop, dozens of browser tabs revealed bank accounts being steadily drained by his wife in California. His real wife, who had known about his con game all along. But Sabrina didn't know any of this when she entered the room. All she saw was the man she thought she loved, lifeless on the floor, and next to him, Annette. Her sister had somehow reached the room first, through the connecting door from an adjacent suite. She stood there, still in her robe, holding what appeared to be a stack of documents. "He was never going to marry either of us," Annette said quietly, her voice steady despite everything. "These are from his wife's lawyer. Gibson wasn't even his real name. He's done this before, in 3 other states. Find vulnerable women, preferably sisters or best friends, play them against each other, then disappear with their money before the wedding. We were just his latest marks. Sabrina's grip on the scissors slackened. Her voice broke into a whisper. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, he loved me. He said I was special. Different from you. Better than you." As the weight of the truth sank in, both sisters broke into tears. The painful reality hit them like a tidal wave. They had both been deceived, played by a master manipulator who cared for no one but himself. The police would arrive minutes later, responding to multiple 911 calls from guests who had heard the chaos. They found a scene that defied easy explanation. One sister in a bloodied wedding dress, another in a bathrobe, both standing over the body of a man who had orchestrated his own downfall. In the bridal suite, they found Leora, thankfully still alive, being tended to by Susan Elliott. And throughout the hotel, they found evidence of a con game so elaborate it would take months to fully unravel. The investigation revealed a pattern spanning years. Gibson, whose real name was Patrick Huey, had perfected his scheme across multiple states. He would find pairs of close female friends or sisters, using their bond against them, creating conflict and competition that ultimately destroyed relationships. While they were distracted by betrayal and rivalry, he would systematically drain their accounts, always disappearing just before the wedding day. But he had finally chosen the wrong sisters. Annette's methodical evidence gathering and Sabrina's unstable intensity had created a perfect storm that brought his scheme crashing down. The California wife, it turned out, was another victim who had decided to turn the tables, working with Annette in the final weeks to expose everything. In the end, Sabrina spent 6 months in a psychiatric facility, diagnosed with a breakdown triggered by the trauma of discovering she'd been manipulated so completely. And here's the most shocking part. Police investigation of Gibson, also known as Patrick, revealed 5 other pairs of sisters in different states, all being groomed for the same scheme. The exposure of his death and true identity likely saved them from a similar fate. To all my listeners, remember, evil doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it comes dressed in charm and promises, turning love into a weapon and trust into a trap. The real tragedy isn't just what happened at this hotel that day. It's how many red flags were ignored because no one wanted to believe someone they loved could be capable of such calculated cruelty. I hope this story has offered you valuable insights and knowledge. This is Davis, reminding you to stay vigilant and keep those you love close, but never ignore the warning signs, even when they come from those closest to you. Like and subscribe for more true crime stories that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on this case. Could you have spotted the warning signs? What would you have done differently? Until I come your way again in another episode of Crime Realities with Davis, keep tuning in to True Crime Stories 24/7. Stay safe, take care, and be good. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.